The series begins with a woman named Sevgi, who is a famous presenter. We learn that she is divorced and has a young daughter. On this day, Sevgi is preparing for her wedding to a businessman named Fikret, who is also divorced and has a young son. After they finish, they each decide to inform their families, as they did this behind their backs, knowing their families would disapprove. Fikret gathers his family, which includes his mother, Nur-Cihan, his sister Parvin, and his son Talin. They are shocked when they learn that he has gotten married. Nur-Cihan responds by saying that she will never accept this marriage, especially when she learns who the bride is, as she is not from their social class and has many rumors surrounding her because of her job. Talin, in shock, leaves without saying anything. At the same time, Sevgi meets with her family, which includes her daughter Shalale, her sister Salda, and her mother Keval. They are also shocked by the news and are even more shocked when they learn that they will now be moving to Fikret's mansion to live there. This is particularly upsetting to Seval, who is completely against leaving the house and accuses Sevgi of marrying the man for his money. Sevgi gets upset with her and reminds her that she never fulfilled her role as a mother and therefore has no right to interfere in her life. She threatens to leave them without support if they refuse to move with her to the villa. Consequently, they are forced to agree. Then Sevgi receives a call from Fikret, who has arrived under the house. It turns out he has brought a crane to take Seval through the balcony, as she is elderly and has difficulty moving. First, he goes up to meet the family, accompanied by Salim, his sister Parvin's husband, who works with him in the company. Initially, Fikret greets Salda and Shalal, and then goes to greet Seval, who is upset with him. She refuses to let him kiss her hand, but through his polite speech, he manages to win her over, apologizing for marrying her daughter behind her back, claiming that everything happened quickly, acknowledging his mistake. It becomes evident that Seval is very difficult and fearful of many things, such as illness or being touched. She is terrified when she learns that she will be lowered by the crane. However, Fikret reassures her that he will be with her. He takes her. They descend together by the crane. Despite Fikret having secured everything, she remains scared, only feels calm once she reaches the ground. Afterward, the whole family gathers, and they head toward the mansion. On the other hand, Fikret's family starts preparing. Parvin enters her daughter Edel's room and argues with her because she is dressed like a boy. She asks her to be more careful since they are no longer living alone. It becomes clear that Parvin is a controlling woman who is used to imposing her opinion on her daughter. She takes out clothes from the closet and forces her to wear them. Parvin talks to her other brother Farron. We learn that he has just returned from France, where he traveled a while ago and decided to marry a woman from there. For her sake, he changed his religion, which led his father to disown him. After a year, his father died from grief. Farron is afraid that his mother still refuses to forgive him. He says that he has divorced his wife and decided to return to live with them. However, Parvin advises him to postpone the discussion, at least until they resolve Fikret's issue. After a while, Sevgi's family arrives with Fikret, who is annoyed that his mother did not come to greet his wife's family. Sevgi's family starts getting to know Fikret's family. Parvin stands next to her daughter Idil and her son Anil. Seval tries to insult them indirectly. While they are talking, Nur-Cihan arrives, claiming she was late because she was not feeling well. She is dressed in black to show that she disapproves of what is happening, that this is a sad day for her. She refuses to let Sevgi kiss her hand, using the excuse that she is afraid of infection. Afterward, Sevgi introduces her family as well. Surprisingly, Talin does not come out to greet them. It is time for everyone to receive their rooms. As usual, Seval objects to everything. At first, she is upset about the location of her room, but Fikret manages to convince her that it is an ideal spot. It becomes clear that Salda is responsible for her mother, helping her with everything. Meanwhile, Shalale goes to her room, which is upstairs. She is shocked when she hears a noise coming from the bathroom and finds Talin showering there. He brazenly explains that his shower was broken, so he used her room. Turns out he is staying in the room right across from hers. During this time, Salda starts unpacking the bags and brings out all the sweets her mother loves, which they are hiding from Sevgi. A while later, Parvin comes in to inform them that Nur-Cihan wants to meet them. She is surprised when she notices the bag of sweets and explains that the most important rule in the house is that they do not buy sweets from outside because their company specializes in making sweets, so no one buys from competitors. However, Seval ignores this, stating that she will not follow any rules she does not agree with. Sevgi intervenes to assure Parvin that they will resolve the issue. Nur-Cihan requests to meet Talin, who is her favorite grandson. She learns from him that he is upset because his father got married without telling him, which is why he did not come down to greet them. Nur-Cihan says that she also does not approve approve, but she cannot oppose Fikret's decisions since he is the one handling all their work. She explains to her grandson that he must respect his father's decisions even if he disagrees with them. Talon is then compelled to come down and starts to get acquainted with Sevgi and her family. He is surprised that Shalale did not mention what happened between them, but he feels relieved because it could have caused him a lot of trouble with his father. Nur Chihan begins to speak, saying that the family's and the company's reputation requires them to always be mindful of their actions and avoid any problems that could affect the family's long-standing history. She also mentions that Fikret has taken care of everything since his father's death. She respects all his decisions. She congratulates him and his wife on their marriage, welcomes her family into theirs. She then presents Sevgi with a necklace as a gift. We learn that Nur Chihan was supposed to give her the necklace she inherited from her mother, which she had given to Fikret's first wife. Since she did not do this and bought another necklace instead, it indicates that she does not approve of Sevgi's presence. Will try to get rid of her as soon as possible. This makes Fikret's siblings happy. At this time, Taylan stands next to Shalale and quietly tells her that he understands her mother's character well and knows that she did all this to reach the family's wealth. Shalale gets upset and slaps him before running to her room. Amid the shock of both families, Sevgi apologizes and says she will resolve the issue. She then runs to argue with Shalale, who is upset that her mother is yelling at her without knowing what happened. Shalale repeats what Talon said and adds that the family sees them as gold diggers and no one approves of their presence. Sevgi gets upset by what she hears, while Fikret yells at his son and takes him outside to talk. Talon takes the opportunity to criticize his father for the sudden marriage. We learn that Fikret's first wife betrayed him. Since then, he vowed never to trust women again and made an agreement with Talon that neither of them would marry. This is why Talon is upset that his father broke the agreement. Fikret defends himself, saying that his thinking changed over time. He decided to give himself a second chance that might succeed. However, Talon is not convinced and walks away. Fikret returns to his family, who are upset with Shalale's behavior. Fikret defends her, saying that his son deserved what happened to him, which makes them even angrier. For the second time, Fikret challenges his mother, saying that he will not give up on Sevgi and that she and her family will live with them in the mansion. Goes back to Sevgi, pretends to be devastated by Talon's words about her. Fikret apologizes to her and promises that he will always stand by her side and that his family will soon accept the situation. He suggests taking their children out for dinner to clear up the misunderstanding that happened between them on the first day. At this time, Talon bursts into Shalale's room to search for his necklace, which is very precious to him. Shalale mocks, saying that she threw it in the trash. After a lot of searching, he doesn't find it, so Shalale takes it out from the drawer and gives it to Talon. Leaves her room angry. Shalal then drifts into thought while looking at a family photo from her childhood where her father is cut out of the picture. It is revealed that her mother did this after the divorce, which was caused by her husband cheating on her with her close friend. In the evening, Shalali and Talon prepare for dinner, deciding to call a truce for the day and pretend in front of their families that they have reconciled so their parents won't try to make them meet again. At this time, Sevgi goes to inform Nur Chihan that they are going out for dinner. Nur Chihan seizes the opportunity to confront Sevgi, saying she understands her well and knows she is after her son for his money. She challenges Sevgi, saying she will soon expose her in front of everyone. However, Sevgi remains very confident, knowing that Fikret loves her and won't be influenced by his family's words. When Fikret enters the room, Nur Chihan changes the subject and reassures Sevgi that they will take care of her family. At dinner, Fikret and Sevgi are surprised at how quickly their children have reconciled. A little while later, Fikret receives a call from Salim, who says that Cheval is very ill and claims she is dying. Strangely, Sevgi doesn't show concern and tells them to leave her alone, not to exaggerate the situation. She knows her mother is used to pretending to be sick. She mentions that Salda knows her well and is the only one who can tell if their mother really needs a doctor or not. Since Salda hasn't called a doctor, it means their mother is fine. This is just a usual episode. Everyone is surprised by Sevgi's coldness, especially since she tries to continue dinner as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, Seval is hysterical, trying to convince everyone around her that she is dying. Nur Shihan, who is getting a headache from her, tries to calm her down but fails, eventually slapping her. At this moment, Salda returns, having gone out to get medicine for her mother. She is surprised by the calmness in the room and asks what happened, but no one tells her. When they leave, her mother tells her everything and is in a state of distress. On the other hand, Talon asks for permission to leave because he is going out with his friends. His father asks him to take Shalali home since they will be late. Shalali is surprised when Talon takes her to the place he is going to hang out instead of taking her home, as he doesn't want to go out of his way. When she tries to argue with him, he ignores her and walks away. Shalali gets angry and decides to take a taxi, but she is shocked by by the high fares due to the long distance. Realizing she doesn't have enough money, she reluctantly goes inside and meets Taelin's friends. He introduces her to his girlfriend Simton and her sister Mara, who is dating Anil, their cousin. Shalali sits alone all day, unable to blend in with them. After a while, she goes to the bathroom, and during this time, Taelin stands alone. Mara tries to get close to him, and Shalali sees them together, getting shocked and running away. Taelin tries to explain what happened, saying he is innocent, but she is too shocked after seeing him with his girlfriend's sister. Taelin tells her that there are many things she doesn't know, and therefore shouldn't judge them. When she refuses to go with him, he picks her up and forces her into the car, refusing to let her go in that state. He decides to take her and sit in the car in a quiet place. Shalali sees him drinking a beer and decides to try it for the first time in her life. After a while, we see her losing control due to the large amount she drank. Taelin takes her home, trying to keep her quiet, so no one in the house hears them. He brings her to her room and notices she is still not aware of anything, fearing that someone in the house might hear her loud voice. The next morning, Sevgi goes to check on her daughter and is shocked to find Taelin sleeping in her room. She wakes them both up. Taelin tries to explain that nothing happened between them, that he found her unwell and decided to stay with her till he got tired and fell asleep. However, Sevgi doesn't give him a chance to speak, kicks him out of the room. She then slaps Shalali, who breaks down, upset that her mother doesn't trust her. Shalali reminds Sevgi of her advice not to trust men. Shalali points out that despite this advice, Sevgi got married and moved them in with this man without even asking for her opinion or how she felt. Sevgi leaves her and goes to Taelan, who explains everything in detail. When she leaves his room, she finds Shalali waiting for her. Sevgi decides to change her daughter's room so she won't be next to Taelan's. Shalali concludes that her mother still doesn't believe them, challenges her to explain the reason for the change in front of both families. She says she is ready to change rooms if her mother explains. We understand that Sevgi cannot do this because she doesn't want to create more problems with Fikret's family. She is forced to leave her daughter in the same room. Afterward, Shalali goes to argue with Taelin, blaming him for everything that happened. He defends himself, saying he was worried about her and refused to leave her alone when she was unwell. Shalali doesn't believe him. Meanwhile, Sevgi goes to check on her mother and sister and is shocked to find them packing their bags to leave. Seval is forced to tell her everything that happened. Sevgi runs to talk to Fikret, telling him what occurred and pretending to be devastated. She says her mother will never forget this incident unless Nur Cihan apologizes for what she did. Fikret gets upset with his family, especially his mother, who cannot respect his decisions and accept his wife's family. Sevgi insists she knows her mother well and that nothing will stop her decision except for an apology from Nur Cihan. Fikret then goes to confront his mother, reminding her that he has always followed orders and taken on all the work since his father's death without ever complaining, even though everyone else lived their lives normally. Therefore, he believes it's now his right to think about himself, and they should respect this decision. When his siblings try to intervene, he reminds them that none of them cared about the family's future and lived only for themselves. He gives the example of Farhan, who abandoned them all when he decided to marry and move away, which embarrasses them into silence. Fikret forces his mother to apologize to Seval, threatening to leave all the work if she doesn't. He asks Taelin to gather everyone so they can witness what happens. A little while later, Seval and the rest of the family arrive. Nur Cihan, feeling embarrassed, lies and says she did it just to snap Seval out of her state, then apologizes for slapping her. Seval responds by saying she will forgive her this time, but has one condition: they must hold a henna night for Fikret and Sevgi that evening. When Fikret agrees, his family is forced to agree as well. Afterward, the family gathers for breakfast. Seval intentionally annoys them with her behavior. She heaps a large amount of food onto her plate to taste all the dishes. Despite Nur Cihan's anger, she cannot say anything. After a while, a woman named Samar arrives, who is a family friend. We learn that she owns a large bakery and has come to discuss the cake they will need for the wedding. She is accompanied by her two daughters, Simton and Mere. Nur Cihan introduces them to Sevgi and her family. Simton talks to Taelin, curious about why he left the party and didn't answer her calls last night. Afraid to tell her that he spent the night with Shalali, he lies, saying he had to leave to take her home and then went straight to bed. Taelin decides to take Shalali with them to show her around the area and asks for Sevgi's permission. Sevgi reluctantly agrees to avoid showing her discomfort and raising suspicion. Shalali, who also didn't want to go, feels compelled to agree. Meanwhile, Nur Cihan talks with Samar, knowing that she has loved Fikret for a long time, wanted to marry him. Nur Cihan reassures her that this marriage won't last long, that Fikret will eventually realize her feelings for him. On the other side, Sevgi sits in her room with her mother and sister, happy that they managed to make Nur Cihan apologize in front of the entire family. Then, the fashion designer who works with Nurcihan, arrives to choose outfits for the henna night. She gets frustrated with Seval's numerous demands. On her way out, she talks to Parvin, saying she can't deal with Seval anymore. Parvin takes the opportunity to mock Sevgi and her mother, suggesting they drove the designer to this state, hints that she won't be satisfied until she gets them out of the house. Sevgi retorts, saying that Fikret would never allow such a thing, and mocks Parvin, whose relationship with her husband is weak, noting that he never defends her as Fikret always defends Sevgi. At the same time, Talin, Simton, Mary, and Shalale go to show her around the area. They sit in a place, and after a while, Shalale goes to the bathroom. Simton takes the chance to question Talin about why he didn't answer her calls. Showing signs of suspicion, Talin asks her to understand the difficult circumstances he's going through since his father got married without informing him. He explains that he's going through a tough time. Despite this, Simton is still interested in knowing the reason. Feeling cornered, Talin tells her that he didn't want to talk to her at that moment, which upsets Simton. She heads to the bathroom. Shortly after, Anil arrives and Talin leaves them together and walks away. Simton encounters Shalali in the bathroom, and it's evident that she is suspicious of her too. She intentionally tries to annoy her, accusing her of being arrogant for avoiding their attempts to get to know her. Simton also tells Shalele that Talin is the most important thing in her life and embarrasses her by saying that her family is a bunch of scammers who took advantage of Talin's family for money. Shalele gets upset and leaves, finding Talin waiting outside as he was worried she might tell Simton about seeing him with Mare. Shalele reassures him that she didn't say anything and then tells him she's leaving because she's bored. She decides to go home alone, making up an excuse to her mother that she returned quickly to avoid worrying her. Shalale is surprised to find that her mother has bought her a dress for the wedding and is delighted with it, thanking her mother profusely. Sevgi apologizes for what happened in the morning, explaining that she worries about her daughter and fears someone might take advantage of her. She advises Shalale to set boundaries with Talin. Meanwhile, Salda starts getting ready for the henna night and coincidentally meets Farin, who appears to be interested in her. Salda is very happy, but when Parvin sees them talking, Salda gets nervous and walks away. Farin tells his sister that he's just trying to win Salda over to their side. Parvin then goes to get ready and asks her daughter's opinion on her dress. Although she likes it, Parvin decides to change it, saying she wants to wear something that shows she is sad, doesn't approve of what's happening. She orders her daughter to wear the dress she brought for her. In the evening, the henna night begins, and Nur Shihan is forced to participate in all the rituals for her son's sake. Seval starts singing for her daughter. At this moment, Sevgi drifts into an old learn that she couldn't enjoy her childhood because she was always busy taking care of her mother. One day, she wanted to attend a neighbor's henna night, but Seval refused and promised to sing for her on her own henna night. In the present, Sevgi is emotional, and both she and her mother break down remembering this memory. Shalale stands at a distance, watching the events unfold and feeling emotional, seeing her mother getting married. She decides to step outside and is surprised to find Talin there, who is also upset about his father's marriage. Simton sees them sitting together and gets upset. Talin, playing with a card, explains a game to Shalali. The game involves making a wish and then throwing the card. If it goes far, the wish will come true. He reveals that he has never succeeded so far. Shalali decides to try and manages to throw the card far on her first attempt, making her very happy. When Talin asks her about her wish, she refuses to tell him. At the end of the day, Sevgi talks to her husband, thanks him for everything he is doing for her. The next day is the wedding day. Talin is surprised by Simton, who enters his room to wake him up. She is afraid that Shalali might steal him away from her, so she doesn't want to leave him alone all day. When he asks Simton if she is jealous, she completely denies and insists that they go to Shalali's room to check on her, using the excuse that she needs support on a day like this, since her mother is getting married. She drags Talin with her against his will. Shalale gets angry at them for barging into her room without hearing her mother's voice. She hides them in the bathroom. At this moment, Sevgi enters to check on her daughter. She notices Shalale is tense, guesses that her father might have called her, but Shalal denies it. It becomes clear that Sevgi still hasn't gotten over her ex-husband and always asks her daughter about his news, wanting to know if he contacts her. After Sevgi leaves, Talin and Simton sneak out of the room, and Shalala orders them not to enter her room again. On the other side, Nur Chihan sits down to talk with Fikret, trying to remind him of how he felt when his wife cheated on him. She tells him that it was the result of a wrong choice and that he should avoid making the same mistake again by choosing the right woman. However, Fikret refuses to take her advice, believing that Sevgi is the only one suitable for him, leaves. At the same time, Faran talks to Salda, and Salim, who knows that Farin is trying to take advantage of her, sees them. Indirectly, he threatens Farin, saying he will tell the rest of the family, but Farin ignores his words completely. Shortly after, the wedding starts. We see Shalal and Talin each sitting sadly by themselves. Fikret recites a poem for his wife, Sevgi, which impresses her. She also sings a song for him. Shalale, upset by what is happening, leaves and sits outside alone. Talin sees her and follows to comfort her. When she asks why he isn't with his girlfriend Simtin, he says that no one would understand him on a day like this except her, because they are going through the same situation. He explains that she is upset about her mother getting married, just as he is upset about his father getting married, despite the promise they had made to each other. Shalale shares that her father cheated on her mother, who couldn't forgive him and decided to divorce. Since then, he hasn't tried to contact them. Turns out that Talin went through a similar situation after his mother cheated on his father, leading to their divorce. He hasn't seen or heard from his mother since. Shalal is deeply affected by this. She changes the subject and asks him about Mer, mentioning that she seems like a good person and is surprised she is involved with her sister's boyfriend. Talin responds, saying it's a complicated situation, but assures her that Mer is a good person and could be her friend, though she shouldn't get involved in the details. He admits he is at fault for the problem, but Shalale believes he is a good person hiding his pain through many relationships. Talin is moved by her words and tries to get closer to her. Simtin, watching them from a distance, becomes distraught and runs over to confront them, starting to hit Shalale. Shalale tries to explain that she didn't do anything and that Talin approached her, but Simtin doesn't give her a chance to speak. When Talin tries to defend Shalale, Simtin slaps him. Shalale leaves and returns to the party, while Simtin insists on exposing them to their families. Talin chases after her to calm her down. On their way, they encounter Mary, who tries to understand what happened. Anil intervenes, thinking they are fighting with Mer, and comes to her defense, leading to a fight with Talin. Anil mocks Talin, reminding him of the day his mother cheated on his father, causing Talin to break down and start hitting him. The wedding turns into a big brawl until Fikret intervenes and separates them, apologizing to the guests and restoring order. At the end of the day, the family returns to the mansion. Fikret goes to his son's room, starting an argument without knowing the reason for the fight, accusing him of ruining the wedding. Talin gets upset, accusing his father of being selfish and explaining the reason for the fight, saying he couldn't stand hearing about his mother's betrayal. Fikret is affected and upset with himself, but refuses to admit he was wrong. He changes the subject, saying that Nur Kihan is waiting for them downstairs. Meanwhile, Sevgi talks to her daughter in the kitchen, lowering their voices so no one can hear them. Sevgi notices her daughter is upset, guesses that her father called her. Shalale responds, feeling that her mother still hasn't gotten over him and agreed to marry to spite him, as if punishing him for his past infidelity. It's clear that Shalal understands her mother well. Despite this, Sevgi denies it. That moment, Fikret is eavesdropping and is shocked by what he hears. Unbeknownst to them, Parvin is also eavesdropping and doesn't realize her brother is listening too. Afterward, Nur Chihan gathers both families and expresses her sadness over what happened at the wedding, stating that their family has many enemies and she doesn't want outsiders to revel in their misfortune. She then forces Anil and Talin to apologize to Fikret. Eventually, everyone returns to their rooms, except for Shalale, who goes to confront Talin after he tried to get close to her. She blames him for everything that's happening and fears that Simtin will tell their families. Talin reassures her that he will talk to Simtin to resolve the issue, but Shalali remains doubtful. Simtin, after being pressured by her family, reluctantly recounts what happened and is upset that Talin hasn't even tried to talk to her since the incident. She plans to tell his family everything the next day. Meanwhile, Sevgi insists on knowing the reason for the ongoing conflict between Talin and Anil, which keeps them at odds. Fikret begins to tell her the story, us back to the past. We see Fikret returning home one day and asking his son about his mother. At that time, Anil told them she was upstairs and led them to her, where they found her with another man. Since then, Talin has hated Anil, believing that if it weren't for that day, his parents wouldn't have separated. Fikret decided to divorce her and vowed never to marry again. In the present, Fikret seizes the opportunity to ask Sevgi about her ex-husband, but she denies even thinking about him. On the other hand, Parvin talks to her mother, recounting what she overheard. Nur Kihan decides to use the situation to her advantage, planning to make Fikret suspect that his wife is involved with her ex-husband to destroy their marriage. Shalale spends the night thinking about what happened. The next morning, she goes to wake Talin, wanting to go with him to meet Simtin and explain what happened. Initially, Talin refuses to take her with him, but Shalale insists, jumping around the room until he gives in and decides to take her. Shalale waits in the bathroom while he gets dressed and notices that the shower works fine, including that Talin entered her room intentionally to annoy her. Meanwhile, Samar talks to her daughter Simtin, assuring her that she will solve the problem before heading to work. She calls Fikret, who is away from his phone, and Sevgi notices the call from Samar but pretends not to see it. She is puzzled when Fikret lies, saying it was a work call, and begins to suspect Samar and her husband. At this time, Seval tries to walk around a bit after getting tired of sitting, and she accidentally overhears the maids talking about Samar. They mention that Samar has loved Fikret for a long time and that Nur Kihan herself wants this marriage to happen. Seval goes to tell her daughter Salda about what she overheard, convinced that Nur Kihan will try to separate Sevgi and Fikret to marry him to Samar. She decides to stay vigilant to protect her daughter from any harm. Later, the family gathers for breakfast, and it's revealed that Nur Kihan ordered Parvin to have someone send flowers to the house, pretending they are from Sevgi's ex-husband, with a card saying he regrets everything. On this day, Shalale lies to her family, saying she is going to university and that Talin offered to take her, which she accepted. Turns out she did this so they could meet Simtin without anyone knowing. Shortly after, the flowers arrive. Fortunately, Seval happens to be passing by the door, notices the card, and figures out the plan. She asks her daughter Salda to take the flowers to a room. Parvin intervenes, insisting on giving them to Sevgi to make her read the card in front of everyone. They argue over the flowers until they drop them, causing the family to come over due to the noise. Sevgi picks up the card, quickly hides it when she sees it's from her ex-husband, which makes Fikret suspect something is wrong. Nur Kihan is frustrated that her plan failed. Later, Fikret calls Samar, who asks to meet him. He makes an excuse about having work, but when he learns it's important, he agrees to meet her at his office. Parvin then comes in, saying she saw the card and knows it's from Sevgi's ex-husband. Fikret rebukes her, asking her to stop interfering in other people's lives. Sevgi, puzzled by her ex-husband's sudden contact after all these years, tries to understand the situation. Her mother explains it's likely a prank, but Sevgi is not convinced and plans to handle it her way. During the conversation, she learns from her mother that Samar has been in love with Fikret for a long time and realizes it's true since Fikret hid that Samar tried to call him in the morning. Meanwhile, Talin and Shalale go to meet Simtin, who is upset that he brought Shalale along. Talin tries to calm her to prevent the situation from escalating, then leaves Shalale to talk to her while he listens from a distance. Talin becomes nervous when he hears Shalale saying that he tried to get close to her. Shalale assures Simtin that nothing happened between them and that it was just a mistake, insisting she would never be interested in Talin, even if he were the last man on earth. Simtin, seeing Shalale as cunning, accuses her of being just like her mother, trying to attract rich men to exploit them. Shalale breaks down and leaves. Talin defends Shalale, saying she is innocent, but Simtin demands one proof of her innocence and of his love for her. When he doesn't respond, she leaves him. After a while, Talin is surprised to see Mera coming in. She is jealous of Shalale after finding out that her sister saw them together. We learn that Mera and Talin were in a brief relationship that no one knew about before he started dating Simtin. However, Mare still can't get over him. Talin knows she agreed to be with his cousin to spite him and asks her to stay away because he will never get back with her. It's also revealed that Simtin knows nothing about their past relationship. Mera is upset by his words, and it becomes clear she plans to get revenge. Meanwhile, Sevgi decides to visit Samar at her shop. Despite Samar's anxiety over the visit, she tries to maintain her composure and speaks normally. Sevgi pretends she was just passing by and wanted to thank her for the wedding cake. After a while, Sevgi learns that Samar has an errand to run and decides to leave, intending to follow her. She's surprised to see that Samar is heading to Fikret's company. At that time, Fikret is at the factory overseeing the new products. After much thought, he decides to appoint Farin as the marketing manager of the company. Farin is excited to learn that they trust him again, unlike Anil, who feels wronged because he has been working at the company for years without being given any position. However, Salim believes that it's their company and they have the right to make any decisions they want. Salim then goes to talk to Fikret in his office, noticing that he has been acting differently since the morning. Fikret expresses his doubts, wondering if Sevgi married him to spite her ex-husband, especially after seeing the flowers. Salim thinks this reason is insufficient for suspicion and that Fikret's past experiences are influencing him. He advises Fikret to trust his wife more. Shortly after, Samar arrives to inform Fikret that her daughter saw Talin and Shalale together and knows that if Nur Chihan finds out, it will cause a big problem. Fikret thanks her for informing him and assures her that he will handle it. At that moment, Sevgi enters, having followed Samar until she saw her enter the company. Samar becomes nervous and excuses herself, saying she had an errand nearby and decided to drop by to greet Fikret. After Samar leaves, Sevgi refuses to tell her husband that she suspects him. At the mansion, Salda is walking in the garden when she accidentally overhears Nur Chihan and Parvin talking. She learns that Sevgi went to Fikret's office and found Samar there. Salda informs her mother. They become worried about Sevgi. When they call her, they find out that she is heading to her ex-husband's house to confront him about sending the flowers. Despite her mother's warnings, She is determined to follow through with her plan. It turns out that Fikret has one of his men following her, as he has started to suspect her. Meanwhile, Shalali returns home, and Edel sees her in a distressed state. Edel brings some sweets and goes to check on her. Although Shalali refuses to share what happened, she thanks Edel for her concern, showing that Edel is very kind and unlike her mother. Fikret returns home and asks to meet Talon and Shalali. He takes them aside so no one can hear them, and immediately slaps Talon, accusing him of trying to take advantage of Shalali. Talon admits that he was the one who tried to get close to her and continues to defend Shalali in front of his father. Shalali feels sympathetic towards Talon, especially when she sees his father scolding him. She lies, saying it was a game between them and the whole situation was a misunderstanding, which Talon confirms. Despite this, Fikret believes his son is irresponsible and regrets not punishing him for every mistake in the past. He hints that Talon is just like his mother and will never change, which makes Talon break down, accusing his father of being the reason for everything that went wrong in the family. Talon says his family ruined his relationship with his wife and demands that his father take responsibility for his mistakes, just as he asks others to admit theirs. He believes his mother was right to leave them and then storms off to his room. Fikret then asks Shalali to trust him more and to come to him if anything happens in the future. Soon after, Fikret receives a call and learns that Sevgi went to her ex-husband's villa. Shocked, he decides to go there himself. Meanwhile, Nurcihan is surprised by a visit from Mera, who comes to inform her that Talon and Shalali are in a relationship, intending to get back at Talon for how he treated her. Shalali goes to check on Talon after the confrontation with his father, finds him in his room, distraught, holding the same necklace. Turns out that it belonged to his mother, which is why it means so much to him. Shalali still believes Talon is a good person, despite how he may appear to others. She stays by his side to comfort him until Parvin enters and informs them that Nurcihan wants to see them downstairs. The two of them go downstairs to meet her. Nurcihan addresses Shalali, accusing her of being just like her mother and trying to manipulate her grandson to use him. She begins to insult Shalali. Whenever Talon tries to intervene, she stops him. Eventually, Saval steps in and firmly defends her granddaughter, saying she won't allow anyone to speak to her that way. Zalda goes to call Sevgi, asking her to return home quickly to resolve the issue. Meanwhile, Fikret has just arrived at Sevgi's ex-husband's villa and is about to enter when he gets a call from Parvin, informing him of the problem at home. He rushes back immediately. Sevgi also returns home, not understanding what's going on. Fikret lies, saying that the kids came to him on their own to explain the misunderstanding that happened today, claiming it was just a silly game that's now over. He says that if anyone is at fault, it's Talon. Nurcihan feels embarrassed, and Fikret makes it clear in front of everyone that Shalali is like a daughter to him, and he won't allow anyone to harm her or speak ill of her. He apologizes to Shalali and her grandmother Seval on behalf of his mother, claiming she misunderstood the situation. This resolves the issue. Shalali leaves and goes to her room, followed by Sevgi, who starts doubting her again. Sevgi suspects that Shalali is trying to cause problems between her and her husband to get revenge for the secret marriage. Despite Shalali's numerous attempts to defend herself, she fails. Sevgi threatens that if she finds out there's anything between her and Talon again, she won't stay silent. Talon overhears this and waits for Sevgi to leave before entering to check on Shalali, who angrily tells him to leave her room. Talon feels sympathetic towards her and guilty because he believes it's all his fault. Meanwhile, Sevgi goes to talk to Fikret, reproaching him for hiding what happened. Fikret explains his position, saying he had just found out was coming to tell her. When he asks where she was, she gets nervous and says she was out buying some things she needed. Fikret leaves, claiming he has work to do. Talon, on the other hand, goes to confront Simton, thinking she told his father and grandmother. When she denies having anything to do with it, he deduces that Mera must have been the one who caused the trouble. At the same time, Fikret confronts Samar, suspecting she informed his mother. Despite her denial, he doesn't believe her. Back at the mansion, Parvin is seen talking to her husband, Salim. It's clear she often tries to coax information out of him to stay informed about everything. During the conversation, Parvin learns that Fikret has started to suspect that his wife is still in contact with her ex-husband and is having her followed. Parvin is thrilled and promises not to tell anyone, but she immediately runs to inform her mother, who is also delighted by the news. Sevgi sits down with her family and explains that she went to meet her ex-husband but didn't find him. She learned from his sister that he didn't send any flowers, but she's convinced that his sister is lying. Meanwhile, Talon goes to meet Mera after confirming that she was the one who told his grandmother. He confronts her, saying that no matter what she does, he will never get back with her and that their relationship is over. Mera, confident that he won't be able to retaliate, admits to telling his grandmother and then walks away. Talon then goes to meet his father, Fikret, who had called him. Fikret apologizes for his earlier remarks, showing that he loves his son deeply, can't bear to be without him. Talon lies, saying he no longer thinks about his mother and has forgotten her since the day she betrayed them, although it's clear he's saying this to avoid upsetting his father. That day, Nur Kihan decides to invite Samar to their home to apologize for Fikret's behavior, putting the whole family, especially Fikret, in an awkward situation. Fikret is worried that Sevgi will find out that Samar has been in love with him for a long time. At the same time, Sevgi announces she has also invited a guest for lunch, Erda, Shalali's old boyfriend. She lies, saying that Shalali called him to come over after having a tough day. Sevgi then informs Shalali and justifies her actions by saying she wants to dispel any doubts in front of both families, prove that Shalali could never be interested in Talin and still thinks about her old boyfriend. Shalali is upset that her mother acted on her own, especially since she despises Erda and hasn't been in contact with him for months. She starts receiving messages from Erda, who believes she wants to get back with him after learning from her mother that she invited him for lunch. Shalali reluctantly responds to his messages despite her dislike for him. Suddenly, she sees a drone outside her window, which turns out to be from Talin, sending her a message to apologize for what he did. He forces her to leave her room and follow the drone, surprising her with a gift of a small doll that looks like her when she's frowning. After changing the subject, they have a long discussion. Shalali decides to pretend in front of the family that she is back with Erda. She also convinces Talin to pretend that he still loves Simton despite their problems, to avoid any further suspicions. After a while, Erda arrives and begins to get acquainted with both families. Although Shalale is the most upset by his presence, she has to control her feelings. Shortly after, Samar and her 2 daughters arrive, and Talin is forced to pretend he still loves Simton despite being upset with her for what she said to Shalale. Everyone then gathers for lunch. During the meal, Fikret suggests that Erda stay the night in the guest room instead of leaving at night. Without any hesitation, Erda agrees, wanting to spend as much time with Shalale as possible. After lunch, all the young people gather in one place. Simton invites everyone, including Erda, to breakfast the next morning. They all agree. Meanwhile, the adults sit and talk. Fikret receives a phone call and steps aside to answer it, surprised to find Samar following him. It becomes clear she's trying to seize any opportunity to talk to him. Sevgi sees them standing together and steps in to talk to Samar, indirectly threatening her that if she tries to get close to her husband again, she won't let it slide. In the evening, Sevgi notices that Fikret is avoiding talking to her, so she pretends to be upset and distraught to force him to reconcile. They spend some time discussing their issues, and by the end of the day, Fikret feels guilty for doubting her, realizing that Sevgi is indeed a clever woman. Later, Shalale is surprised when Erda enters her room, trying to understand why she decided to think about him again and reconcile after he had been trying for months. Shalali is only interested in getting him out before anyone notices his presence. Suddenly, Talin enters after hearing their voices. He starts getting jealous and argues with Erda, claiming he is breaking the house rules and that he won't allow him to enter Shalali's room, as she is like a sister to him. When Erda refuses to leave, Talin threatens to expose him to the whole family, which scares Erda into leaving. Shalali tries to explain to Talin that she is innocent and is only concerned with fixing her image in his eyes, but he remains upset, leaves. Talin spends hours unable to sleep, so he decides to go play basketball alone. Shalali, also unable to sleep, follows him and continues until he forgives her. They start playing together until they tire and fall asleep on the ground. The next day, they prepare for the breakfast that Simton invited them to. Simton gathers all her friends to introduce them to Erda, as he is new to the group. She is very happy that day. She no longer worries about Shalali, since she found out that Shalali is back with her old boyfriend. Shalali and Erda sit alone at a table, and it's clear that Shalali feels bored. She waits for Erda to go to the bathroom, then goes to get some food. Talin takes the opportunity to follow her, admitting that he is also bored and wants to leave by any means. He suggests they escape together. She agrees. Talin promises to handle Erda and Simton himself. First, he locks Erda in the bathroom, then spills juice on Shalal's clothes, using it as an excuse to take her home to change. This way, they find a suitable way to escape. It becomes clear that they both are starting to develop feelings for each other, yet they each deny their feelings out of fear of their family's reactions. Suddenly, while they are standing together, they notice a woman approaching. Talin is shocked when he realizes it is his mother. Meanwhile, Sevgi decides to visit her ex-husband for the second time, convinced that he sent the flowers and wanting to punish him for it. Fikret receives a call from his man, who informs him about Sevgi's visit. Fikret apologizes, saying he had decided to stop monitoring Sevgi, but forgot to inform him. He is shocked to learn that Sevgi went to the same address as the previous day, which is her ex-husband's address. This reignites Fikret's suspicions, and he decides to go himself to confirm his doubts.